really every attorney should have a professional data tool. I mean, basically, a lot of what my job is, I just try to educate attorneys who are using Google, because they think Google is Google and you should be able to get everything, but it's inefficient, often inaccurate, and you miss stuff. So, everybody can use it from a diligence perspective of your own clients. Does your client who you just took on for a DUI and they tell you, no, I haven't had any alcohol related cases. And then you run, a background check on your client, and there's 2 that were 10 years ago. Oh, I thought those dropped off, and so you avoided a surprise in court. Or if you're doing contract or acquisitions, you could do diligence on the business and the principles of the business and their background, and sort of prevent your client from buying a business that's got, sort of a big hairy closet of skeletons in it.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by ConsultWebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that Mike wants to be like. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in legal marketing and law firm development. I'm Jake Sanders. With me is Paul Julius. Paul, is there a game better than horse?
Well, I'll tell you, my basketball skills could extend a game of horse, depending on who I'm playing, 45 minutes or 5 minutes. So sometimes I like to ease up a little bit. So maybe we'll play a game of no or the. I don't know. What about you? What's your game?
I think it's great.
You're a pretty tall guy. I'll bet you got some basketball skills.
That's the whole thing with
onomatopoeia.
Yeah, well, no, I'm being tall. Yes, everyone says, "Oh, you play basketball," but I have the knees of Jessica Tandy. I have chalk knees, so I'm not a threat on the court. But I do like to throw the basketball around. Horse is great, man. It's all about strategy.
You got some trick shots, don't you?
It's just about aiming. I just like to throw it. And if I hit it, it doesn't matter. I just like throwing the ball. I could be throwing it at the hoop, behind the hoop, into the garbage. Just throw it right into the garbage and give everybody the middle finger.
Get hit. My bad.
Oh, whoops. Whoops. I threw it at your face.
Sorry.
And then ride off on a real horse. It's an expensive game. Oh, but my bad. I'm out on my real horse. Anyway, we don't have to stop, but we do have to clip clop and let it drop the facts of what's on the show today.
On the show today, we're talking about data. You can use it, digging up hidden records, to digging into your own case data to give your clients better service. First, an article from Bloomberg Law, and then we talk to President of Tracers, Eric Pickering. And as usual, we triangulate our guests' interests, intent, and behaviors with 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The Hot Take Buffet today is basically just sniffing something great. Good cooking smells coming from BloombergLaw.com. The title, God, if I could eat at this restaurant, I would. It's Law Firms Must Innovate to Keep Up with Alternative Service Providers. Yum.
Lickworthy.
Oh, man. What? It's a James Beard thing here. I'll start with this intro and we'll provide the hot takes accordingly. A growing wave of legal process outsourcing companies and alternative service providers are disrupting the legal industry by offering unique delivery models, specialized services, digital capabilities, and cost-effective pricing structures. Major, Lindsay, and Africa's Elizabeth Smith and Roger Garceau offer advice for law firms on how to effectively navigate today's legal services revolution. This was written in January 28, 2020, before the actual revolution of COVID kicked everybody in the law balls. I thought this was interesting. The main question here is, how can law firms avoid getting left behind in this legal services revolution?
Who knew?
What's your hot take? I mean, this is a good thing. Great practical advice as always. Things are echoed in here in the interview. It's a great take. But I mean,
So
what's
I
your
think-
thought? What can we
Yeah,
say
man,
about this?
I found this article. And one thing I will say, when I was looking for some of these different service options and using data and different ways you can use data,
Mm-hmm.
which really ties in. Eric talks extensively about not
Exactly.
only just searching, but some
Right.
of these other purposes.
Uses.
I had a hard time because a lot of it was for in-house counsel. So I don't know. I was trying to find something that was relevant to the lawyer on the street.
Yep, the JD on the street. Yes, exactly right.
Yes. And I think there's some great ideas in here about being more of the service mentality, because we talk all the time on here about marketing and your brand and
Mm-hmm.
reinforcing this, and these things are all great. I don't mean to be all down on that stuff, but providing excellent service, doing those little extra things. My old boss used to call it the mint on the pillow. Just those little touches, those are the things that clients are going to remember, and those are the more importantly are going to tell other people about when they're talking about their experience with you and your law firm.
Wow.
So I thought there was some really good ideas in here that are kind of applicable to everybody, really. Unbundled legal services, I thought, was a great idea. Client engagement apps,
Right.
making sure that what you're doing and the things that you've decided to offer, different pieces, different, maybe unbundled, or maybe you have flat fees for certain matters.
Sure. Yeah.
Make sure that you're actually meeting a client's need, and they want that, and they are pleased that you're doing this. So you're not just spinning your wheels saying, oh, I have all these things that it's geared for the client, and the clients are saying, yeah, that's nice, but I don't actually need any of that. What I really want is this.
Right.
And I think a really great example of that is someone who's incredibly responsive and adaptive is Aaron Levine at Hello Divorce.
Right. Yeah.
Constantly reworking, listening to clients,
Yes.
and incorporating what they say and what they need into what she offers.
Right. Yes. Well, it was interesting. Great example too, and good take. Service. You have to be servicing. Always be servicing. This is what Eric says later. Thinking of the way you can meet the client needs, and not all the ways that you can solve your problems. I think it'd be great to get the 2-in-1 solution here. And I think everyone's looking for the dashboard, or a one in done kind of situation. I think maybe that's a theme that I'm hitting on recently. But what you've been hitting on is this why. Why are you going into these? Why are you unbundling these services, besides procurement, besides overhead, besides cost, besides business development, besides, all of the, normal spreadsheety kind of reasons? Why are you attempting to meet these needs or use these tech innovations? Maybe one of the coolest takeaways too from Eric later on is, and this is echoed here in this Bloomberg Law piece, is getting advice on business operations, getting advice on how you think of things, is actually getting someone to poke holes in your theories and to sort of help vent the ideas. Because if you're a solo or a small, and to your frustration too, this is all in-house, but I think the solo would be dealing with this in an advanced state of entrepreneurship. I think they'd be worried about this or considering these things. But I think getting someone you can talk to, a partnership, or someone who can, a sounding board. I thought that was the most interesting takeaway from Eric's interview, was not that there is this data heavy solution that can get you optimized and, all of this, businessy stuff. It was really about coming back to that service and being of use, and knowing why. Maybe there's a whole bunch of what's here, but the why would be the most important thing. And I think if you have someone who you can talk to help align your why, and clients, talk to your clients, like Erin Levine, your example. How does she know how to deliver what clients want? Because she talks to clients and listens to them and shares the advice in her marketing. Here's what I'm hearing from people in regards to COVID and divorces and quarantining and family share, time share of the kids and all this stuff. She's sharing these concerns so people can gauge it. And, that creates the marketplace that then turns into the marketing that then creates this kind of flywheel effect. But I like the service side. I like the advice. I like this article. I think everybody should take a look because there is good advice, but getting to this service, getting to this why, getting to why you capture the data, can get you to really use that data in a really transformative way. Maybe that's what I'm saying. Speaking of transformations, we're gonna transform right now into interview mode with Eric Pickering from Tracers, and it's gonna be indicative of the changing culture. It's gonna be educational. It's gonna pick at your bones like a vulture. And I hate to divulge you, and I thought I told you, but we're going to go right now. Let's roll.
Let's go.
Lawson continues. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Since 1999, ConsultWebs has been helping law firms connect with clients on the web, connect digital marketing success with firm success, and connect their business goals to proven strategies that help them get the most out of their legal marketing. Go to consultwebs.com to learn more.
And now, for a Lawsome interview.
Eric Pickering is the president of Tracers, a premier data provider with decades of expertise supplying businesses and law firms with the data and intelligence they need to succeed. Eric has over 25 years of experience in running and growing businesses and has worked at Amazon.com, Booz Allen Hamilton, and Procter & Gamble. He earned a BS in mechanical engineering from University of Washington and an MBA from Harvard Business School, and he's earned a spot in the spotlight here on the Lawson Podcast. Eric, welcome aboard.
Thank you. It makes me just sound cooler when you say it in that tone of voice. Everything about it.
Man, thank
nice
you.
To be here.
You're cool. You're making us cool. So we're just as an osmotic kind of cool session. So talk about Tracers. Give us the overview, and then specifically, how do you work with lawyers and law firms? The data premier provider. What does that entail?
So that entails, Tracers has been around for about 25 years, and we are a cloud-based legal research platform. So in addition to serving attorneys, we serve law enforcement, fraud examiners, background screening companies. So we aggregate all the public records and proprietary records on people out there, and it gives like a 360-degree view of 99% of the U.S. adult population. So it's bazillions of terabytes of data and 6,000 sources, and so we just make it all in one easy place to aggregate all that stuff. That's Tracers, and then attorneys have been using us. We've got some that have been on the customers for over 20 years, and basically they use us to do the fact-based research. So there's the legal research for the case law, and you figure out the law part, but then we enable the fact base about the people and the assets of the businesses and the cases, so that they are most prepared when you get either into court or just filings your cases. So thousands of them use us a day, and they use us for finding people, diligence about people, locating assets, information about businesses, and all flavors of that, I could talk forever about, but I won't. So that's, and we have just really turned and started focusing in this space. So I'm excited to be here.
So is this like, are we talking like doing in like divorce cases or insurance fraud or like kind of?
Yes. And yes. I mean, basically, so I'll give you 2 more minutes on it, which is really every attorney should have a professional data tool. I mean, basically, a lot of what my job is, I just try to educate attorneys who are using Google, because they think Google is Google and you should be able to get everything, but it's inefficient, often inaccurate, and you miss stuff. So everybody can use it from a diligence perspective of your own clients. Does your client who you just took on for a DUI and they tell you, no, I haven't had any alcohol related cases, and then you run a background check on your client and there's 2 that were 10 years ago, oh, I thought those dropped off, and so you avoided a surprise in court. Or if you're doing contract or acquisitions, you can do diligence on the business and the principles of the business and their background, and sort of prevent your client from buying a business that's got sort of a big hairy closet of skeletons in it. But the thing you said is, there's a family law is a core. There's a core use there of just all the assets and contested divorces, but really it's sort of across the board. Almost every practice area, it's smart to make at least more efficient and often make your cases better, because you can find the one piece that the other side didn't have.
So when we're talking about data, everybody wants to use the data, big data, little data, mechanical Turks. It seems like lawyers understand this because they have to go through reams of paper, which ends up being data. Do you see any reluctance in the marketplace for people, or are people using data as like a differentiator or as sort of like a weapon? Like there seems to be a marketable aspect to saying we use this stuff to find deeper layers of research. Do you find that lawyers are kind of using data as a marketable asset in that way, or are they still sort of grasping the importance of it, or just sort of get to the data aspect of this? Because it seems like it's everywhere. Everybody should use it. In marketing, we're all data driven, but you're like, well, what are you really looking at, kids? So can you just unpack that?
Yeah, it's very, it's counterintuitive that the short answer is a lot of lawyers really don't have. I mean, my best guess is that at least half do not have a professional data tool that enables all of the things you just said. It's a differentiator. You get better cases, and it's definitely counterintuitive. And I think I was at a previous show, and a law professor is like, can you just do a course so I can at least educate my law students not to use Google? I think it's, I sort of rationalize it as, you grow up and you think, you just know Google is the place to go for everything. Right. And you don't, and it's not super clear what a public record is, what's proprietary record. So it's kind of murky and unclear. So people just don't know. And therefore, it's like I said, a lot of my job is just educating, because, our customers, we had this one guy who was, he's like, I can't believe what I was able to do, and my client loves me. And I was like, man, that's awesome. Let's put you out in as a use case and or a case study and a review. And he's like, no. This is my secret weapon. Like, I don't want my competitors to know.
Yeah.
It really is a differentiator, but it's just interesting because a lot of folks just don't get it, and so they don't do it.
Right.
Well, and Google too, not people might think Google is all encompassing, and they certainly do, have their little fingers out in a lot of stuff, but there are a ton of networks, a ton of resources and things that simply aren't in Google. They're just not accessible. And I mean, I'm not talking about, the dark web, but there's just networks that aren't indexed. There's resources that you just can't get at Google. So, you got a huge blind spot, really, if you think about it.
Yeah. And you'd made me think that well, if they're public records, then Google will have scraped them and they'll be in there. And and it's not even, I would say by and large, it's not even intentional that it's not out there. It's just that the courts and the counties don't have the resources, and it's certainly not a priority to make this easy for everybody to find. Like, they have to make it available, but they're not going to go put a lot of effort into really making it easy. So that's like finding it and then finding it fast are the sort of the two big parts that we solve.
Yeah, definitely. So, we talk a lot these days, uncertainty in these uncertain times seems to be the lead into almost every commercial I've seen on TV lately.
That's true.
It comes to everything, business management in these uncertain times. In general, do you think law firms have it different from any other businesses? And following on that question, do you see any positives or encouraging signals for law firms coming out of all this?
Well, I think that law firms, by and large, are positioned really well for this what we're going through and what we're going to be going through. I mean, granted, they're definitely exposed to the same uncertainty of like how fast the economy will get back up, and there's been this sort of weird pause. But for the most part, it's a counter-cyclical industry, meaning when the rest of the economy goes down, they go up, which is a fantastic place to be. And it makes me happy to have them as one of our main verticals. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and you're seeing that already. You're seeing that in terms of encouraging signs, like family law. Some of them are surprising, like, family law, custody sharing in quarantine, like that's spiked. Estate planning, everyone's thinking about death, that's spiked. Mm-hmm. Contract law, does this count as like I get out of my contracts? Collections, bankruptcy, bankruptcies are it's all bad news from an economic perspective of a pure bankruptcy attorney. They tripled 10 years ago, and I'm sure the same thing's going to happen. So those are all, and as a one data point, like Tracers has seen an increase in the number of attorneys signing up. So, we're definitely seeing people already getting ready for that or pivoting into that. And so, I do think that's a great dose of optimism for, by and large, attorneys of like, you are in a good spot. People need advice. And, you might have to do some work to put yourself in a position to really reap that, or maybe not. Maybe if you're already, in collections, like they're just going to go through the roof. So I think by and large, they're positioned well. And we are already seeing sort of that momentum of growth.
So using tech here, using something like Tracers could help you break out into new practice areas. Maybe a law firm could look to, sort of, horizontally expand, get a couple, partners on that work with, Tracers to work on new cases and work them better. I mean, do you think there's something that like law firms are struggling to sort of shift here? I mean, of course it's optimistic. People are looking to Tracers. They're looking to use more tech. Is there something that you're seeing people struggle with that maybe you want to speak to that maybe they're missing or that,
I think, you were actually talking about what I hear as the struggle is this question of how much they should change their approach. Should they change it all? Should they just hunker down and everything's go back to normal? Or do we do a radical, hire a new partner and a brand new practice area that is, granted it's law, but it's unrelated to what you're doing. So I think that's what I hear people talking about and asking questions. Well, how can I do that? And, and I think it's, my view is this is going to be a long and slow recovery. I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's, if just the ripple effects are going to take a long time to play out. Mm-hmm. So, when I talk with folks about that, I encourage them and help, it's to do the things that they feel they can be successful at. And maybe that's using Tracers to get better data in a specific part of it. Right. I really love the practical advice and sort of pivot, which is it's not ABC, always be closing. It's ABS. A friend of mine made that up. Always be servicing. So like give out free advice. Everyone needs advice. Everyone's confused and all these things. And then that will lead to your client base growing, and everyone can do that. Like it's not particularly hard. And then the second one I really like is just the no touch case. So no touch law service, which I think is hard for lawyers to sort of get their heads around, because they want to sit down with their clients and, look them in the eye. And then I think that's just going to be a long-term pivot. People would rather not come look at you. And then, if you can make some lemonade out of the efficiency of that. Like you can be more efficient and just do double the cases, because you're not having to wait for people to show up and yada, yada. So, I think there isn't sort of here's the blanket best answer for that. But as I have those conversations, it's really about, plan for the worst, hope for the best, and, start trying something.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about always be servicing, answering questions. How could law firms get to that? Is that content? Is that blogs? Is that TikTok? This is a marketing question. This is a communication kind of question. And then unpack a no-touch law service, because I really think that's interesting. So those two things. So always servicing. How are we servicing? Because they're like, I do the law stuff. Now what?
Yeah. Well, I first of all, I just profess to not be an attorney and not have but I will tell you,
we do that too.
From a customer perspective, that's my view of it, which is, and also just from I should also profess to be nowhere near a marketing expert. But, if you take those two caveats, it was my answer. I would say, look, just get out there. It's like, if you're not on social media, don't do it on social media. Do it in your community.
Right.
I mean, that's an old school way to do it, and it works. Old school is because it's been around forever. And if you're on one of the platforms, just start talking about it. And so there's the part of, how do you get people to ask you questions? I think it's, and probably these are maybe equally hard to some degree. But there's one is, how do you get people to ask you questions? And the other one is to pivot pivot your model to, you answer them for free, and you don't put in a billable hour, and you don't do all this stuff. And I think that's the other big hurdle, putting where we are aside. If you would ask the question a year ago, there's just this sort of, it's a little bit of a religious debate, I think, with attorneys that, well, that's the service. I mean, if I start giving it away for free, how's that going to work? So there's those two sides of that first part. And then I forgot there was a second part.
No touch. So just sort of what would you sort of unpack as the steps to get towards a no touch? Should they get chat bot stuff? Do they do an intake? How do they kind of get towards that no touch? How can they replicate face to face too? I mean, I would assume that, or do people want that? Maybe they don't want that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I you're gonna get a theme of my responses, which is, I basically am. Maybe it's because I'm talking to myself, but it's like, I'm talking to sort of the lowest common denominator on the tech stuff. Like, I am not encouraging. I don't recommend, like, here's 5 softwares, you bundle them together, it's going to solve your problem.
Right.
I just, because I think most people aren't going to do that. They don't want to do that. And so again, the simple answer of what I'm talking about is schedule a Zoom. Everyone knows what that is. And if they don't, teach them. And wow, you're a tech savvy lawyer. I got to do a face-to-face, and I didn't have to go out and worry about, what CNN's going to tell me I just did. So, I mean, it's, again, I know I'm massively oversimplifying, but that's a huge step of, okay, wow, I don't have to schedule. Like I said, the part of getting somebody to come into your office, and then how that goes, and the experience, and what your office is like, and the cost, and all that in itself is a big win out of this. That you can debate the amount of shift that's going to have, but I think I will guarantee you, if we fast forward a year from now, the top 3 headlines in CNN will be about the newest mutation of the virus and why you should not go anywhere near, people.
Mhm.
They just because they like scaring you. That's what sells. That's what sells. That's what people watch. So it's this weird sort of self-fulfilling. The media is going to keep this thing going, and
Could
so
be.
that's why sort of one of the key reasons I think it's going to be long and slow is people are scared.
Well, and even if it abates or something, there's still going to be me and Paul talk about the psychological sort of fallout, that sort of nuclear winter that's in your mind, like, how it adjusts. I think we just need to make sure that you change the way you're servicing clients, and then think about a potential way where you can do it with limited interface. Now, I have one question about data and search and seizure and constitutional rights and sort of what is data? Who does it belong to? So when you guys are going into, openly available, signal intelligence and stuff like that, what do you think the future is here for data and privacy, and how do you make sure you guys are steering clear of like constitutional, infringements? Or do you think about that stuff, or is that a cuckoo question?
No, I think it is super relevant. I think I would make myself sound a lot smarter than I am if I used words like constitutional and things about that I worry about. But I definitely worry about the latest. There is just a massive shift of basically letting consumers take over their data. So CCPA, the California Protection Act, and then there's
GDPR,
tons of other states, GDPR. So all that is happening. It's not only coming; it is here, and it's so that is a huge component of me mitigating the risk to my business. Mm-hmm. So we have to be able to be in a super clear place around what that means.
Oh yeah, totally.
And then sort of in parallel to that, the part that I like about sort of the new blockchain yada yada stuff is I think that's really going to enable that in a positive way. So we see there are so many employment screening companies who are trying to be the one to come up with I manage my own identity, and therefore I manage my own criminal records, and I manage my own background check.
Interesting.
Basically.
Wow.
And you cut them completely out, and it's all blockchain, so it's all trustable. And so I think that'll be. I think that will actually enable and help sort of solve some of that without a bunch of legislation.
Interesting. Yeah. So wow. So I mean, have you seen anything that seems promising in this regard? Like any tech startups or any kind of companies coming out? I mean,
well, I've seen. I would say it's promising in that there was one that the backers are promising. So like this is not Joe Blow starting up in a garage. This is right. I started eBay, or I can't remember what the backer was, but there is. Wow. I mean, in San Francisco, you could throw a rock and hit 6 identity management blockchain startups, and it's really just a question of that eBay question. How did eBay all of a sudden become the one auction site? You guys maybe not even be old enough to remember that. But there was a bunch of auctions. There's a bunch of auction sites, and all of a sudden eBay became, which is a terrible name, if you think about it. And it's that. So one of them needs to get traction, and then
Eric letting it hang out.
By the way, let me throw a little shade over
just some shade on eBay. Don't tell him I have a Yahoo account. Oh boy.
Well, you know what though? You know what I've seen actually come out of eBay is like Jake and I are musicians, and there's a site called like Reverb, which is it's like eBay just for music stuff. So eBay's kind of
clones.
Model.
The clones kind of come off of those things.
Yeah, it's kind of cool where you could at least look at that and say, okay, but this doesn't necessarily encompass what it is I'm looking for, but it's a good start. So that's kind of encouraging. Maybe some of these companies in San Francisco are looking at it, what's there now, and saying, hey, it's a good foundation, but we're not really where we need to be right now.
Yeah. It's and there's just the hard part is to get the companies to get a Boeing to say, yeah, I'll trust the blockchain background check. I mean, it's just like there's a conversion. Exactly. But yeah, so I think I do think that's an encouraging overall, put the power back, give the power to the people.
Excellent.
All right, man. So we've talked kind of general stuff, and there's a lot of really amazing things that you can do with tracers. But what I'd like to know is, what's one piece of advice you could give our listeners, like, that they could start doing today, right now, that would help them improve their law firms and their practices?
The one thing that I have been thinking about a lot, so it's actually not particularly related to tracers, it's related to me running tracers, but I've been in a lot of big companies, and this is the first time I've been an entrepreneur, and it's, I'm experiencing in spades that it's lonely at the top. There's just no, you're sort of floating around, and it just, most attorneys are either, if they're solos, they're the boss. If they're the boss of a small law firm, there's no, you're in your head almost all the time. You're no peers, nobody asks advice. So, I mean, the advice that I've been giving with that is to just find somebody who can poke holes in what you're doing. So, I mean, I do one of the, like, professionally hosted CEO groups, professionally run peer groups. So, I mean, once a month, I spend the entire day with 12 other CEOs focusing on the big picture. And it's been fascinating because, I don't know, I think I'm smart. I mean, I'm smartish, and yet the thing that this has done for me is it's just the discipline of, like I said, stop spinning in your head, and you have to form some thoughts around, like, well, this is what I'm spinning on. And then actually, if you just take some time to think about it, often you can figure out a path forward, because you just get stuck in the spin. So I love that as the prime thing to go do, particularly right now, as there's so many questions on uncertainty. And for an attorney, that can be just having somebody that who also is an attorney in your town, and you just start once a month, you go have coffee and talk about, here's what I'm doing, what are you doing? Because I think like you said, there's a lot of questions and uncertainty, and how do you handle this? And people that are listening to your show have a step up, and they're trying to get opinions and ideas, but then to have somebody to sort of create that discipline for you, I think, is actually the thing I would do. And then I'd also get tracers too.
But what's so amazing is you have to get out of your head. And I think now more than ever, we're working remotely, we're separated, we are in our head. How can people learn more about you? Can they join this group, your CEO group, or can they connect with you in this hole poking manner?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, but it's really is amazing, and that's really important.
I am old enough that the reason I've been enjoying doing podcasts like this is I actually really have been enjoying helping people think through this. So anybody can always reach out to me, ericp@tracers.com. And you can join one of these heavy duty ones. I mean, to be honest, it's expensive. I was really hesitant to do it. The thing I do is like, $1,000 a month or something. It was like, that seemed crazy to me, but now I think it's really worth it. But I think that could be overkill if you're a solo, right? You don't really have, a bunch of employees or something, but and that's why I said there's all flavors of that. You can do sort of the hardcore professionally run. You can do meetups. I mean, there's, you can ask me, you can ask, I'm no Mark Cuban, but you can ask Mark Cuban next time on LinkedIn. He offers that he'll answer anybody's question. I think you got like 150,000 questions or something, but it goes back to the start small. Like everyone knows 3 other attorneys that knows and likes. And, there's a question of how helpful they'll be. Like, you have to, but from just make a connection and, and just start talking about the bigger picture and those questions. And so I think that's, good. Back to my theme of just make a step that direction.
5 questions we ask everyone.
What was the last book you read?
The last book I read, Decoding Boys. I have 3 boys that I'm raising.
You got to figure that out,
fun
man.
Right now.
It's actually really good if you have
Yeah.
teenage boys. Yeah.
Good.
I have 2 teenagers. I got one of each though. So
Yeah.
it's actually weird. Now I have kind of roommates all the time.
The enigma is
very
broken.
strange.
Now, where's the money? Where's the
Yeah,
cash?
yeah. How about it, huh? All right. Number 2. What is your favorite place?
My favorite place, I think I'm in it. The Outer Banks in North Carolina, Duck, the town of Duck. We've been coming here
Nice.
for years, and it's just a gem.
Beautiful. Number 3. What sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
Let's see. I think I am more of a news junkie, so I do, which I'm trying to break that habit. I feel like it's been a problem that's of late. So I'm trying to do less of that and do more of humorous podcasts / people like yourselves. Jared Curry is pretty funny, and then I also love TED Talks.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff.
Yep.
Okay, here comes the toughest question of the bunch. Number 4. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
Oh, it's got to be ketchup. I mean, it's boring, but it's an easy answer.
Hey, it's versatile. You can cover a lot of ground with ketchup. All right, last one. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
That is definitely a Corona Light. That's it. It's a simple cure. Yep.
Nice.
Nice,
Can
man.
respect that.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsonpodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawson.